So as coaches reach out to me, they say, well, what do we do with our time, right? We can't just talk about it, we got to execute it. So what I did is I put up a plan here of what I typically would do with my young travel teams. So what I did, I always showed up early, and I wanted players to have a reason to show up early. Instead of having them show up late and yelling at them when they arrive late, I wanted 20 minutes prior to start time to be this exciting time that kids would yell at their parents to get to the field early because they didn't want to miss the fun stuff. And everyone likes to catch pop-ups. So now I was pretty good with the fungo. If you're not, there are devices out there, paddles and such, that you can hit pop-ups. But 20 minutes prior to go time, I'm hitting pop-ups and we're talking communication, and everyone loves to catch pop-ups. And they would warm up as they'd arrive. So if a kid showed up at 8 minutes prior to start time, he and someone would go down the line and they would play catch. They would do that on their own. I wasn't a big believer in team stretching as a young coach. My theory was if they don't stretch for recess, they don't have to stretch for baseball practice. That's a luxury that you have when they're young. So 20 minutes prior to go time, we did pop-up work, wanting them to arrive and get excited. Everyone likes to do pop-ups. At the start to the 15-minute mark, I have a saying: the most accurate throwing team is the best defensive team. Sometimes I think we overkill ground balls and we don't address the throwing accuracy enough. So I have something I do called the star drill, double plays, and PFP. The ball never hits the ground. It's not a fungo, that slows things down. Everything is in the air. It's something that we can control. We're trying to hit targets. The most accurate throwing team is the best defensive team. That's something I believe in. We stressed it right away. And then this is where a lot of teaching went in. Half fields. I called it half fields. So for 15 minutes, we broke up and we did half fields. And I have an example of a half field. I have about, honestly, maybe 10 or 15 of these half fields that I love. And so here's an example of a half field with two fungo coaches. And the one half field were these folks, and the other half field were these folks. So on, let's say, half field A, what we had is we had a fungo hitter, and he would often hit a ground ball between the third baseman and the shortstop for this play. We had a runner making a base running read, so he worked on his reads. Sometimes we'd have a runner at third working on his reads. Sometimes we'd hit ground balls to the third baseman with a catcher, and we'd create a rundown, and we'd talk about how to execute rundowns. With a left fielder, we'd hit a fly ball. We'd work on tag reads. We'd work on freezing a line drive. The runner at second base would open his hips, and he'd see the ball, and he'd start to make reads on his own. Now, as you get more complicated, it's really important that this fungo hitter and this fungo hitter are communicating. Because on the other half field, let's say half field B, you're doing PFP. Now the PFP is pitcher's fielding practice, but it's tying in the pitcher, the first baseman, and the second baseman, and you're occupying them. And if you have extra outfielders, obviously they can be runners. You really only have one outfielder here, the left fielder. So any outfield reps you're getting there in left field, you can hit that tweener ball if you're good with your fungo for communication. It's really a great time for teaching an opportunity. And then we take a break, and I want to make sure we build in a break, because what I think coaches do is they jam stuff into a practice, and they get so obsessed with getting everything in, they never really dedicate time to relationships. And at that young level, the relationship piece is a huge piece. It can't always be about we got to make them better, we got to make them better. Sometimes the best part of practice is this break, as inconsequential as it seems. You got to build in a break, and I would err on less than more. So at the 30 to 40, that was the break. This was where we got after it. Everyone likes to compete. We got after it here. So at the 45-minute to the 15-minute mark, we did a coach pitch scrimmage. I've commented on how critical it is, I think, to have a runner at third always. And I think it's important to do it with one out. And I can highlight that later, but runner on third, one out was typically how we did our coach pitch scrimmages. And that could take that could be a runner at third, it could be runners at second and third, it could be runners at first and third, it could be bases loaded, one out, constantly manipulating the infield and all kinds of situations. And then the last thing where we finished is we wanted to dedicate time to swings. And I'm not a big fan of a traditional batting practice that the precision game uses. I think the imagination game requires lots of swings. I think it requires adjustability. The pitchers at the imagination game aren't great strike throwers, so we don't want to really embrace discipline yet. We want to swing the bat, we want to be aggressive, we want to be bold. All that discipline comes later in the precision game. One of my favorites was no takes, no foul balls. I would often yell one shot for glory. What that would mean is I would throw balls, they would take a swing. If they put it into fair territory, then they got back in line. If they fouled it off, they would have to run out and pick up a certain amount of balls, 3, 4, 5, bring it back, drop it in my bucket. I would recruit dads to be in the outfield so all the kids could be in line. It was a good social time. They could talk, have some fun. But this idea of no takes, no foul balls, it was my opportunity to get a lot of swings in the shortest amount of time possible. It also allowed me to implicitly work the precision game. I wanted balls squared up in the field of play. The other thing at play was sometimes younger coaches at the imagination game, they're not the best batting practice throwers. So depending on who you have, it does create some freedom for that guy throwing, that you basically say no takes, please swing the bat, and then no foul balls. Promote the precision game. Last thing is, and this is really critical, practice has to end on time. Practice has to end on time. All right, nothing kills the love of a game quite like thinking, when am I going to eat next? And I think one of the mistakes that coaches make, and again, this might be a precision model that gets filtered down over time, is precision coaches, you got to get it right. You got to get it right. We're not leaving until you get it right. And the food will be waiting at your dorm room when we're done. Or in pro baseball, this is your job. You have to get it right. So we overextend time. And I'm really a stickler. At that imagination game, you have siblings and you have parents, and baseball isn't always the biggest thing. So if you want to promote this love of the game, it is absolutely essential that it has to end on time. So I build in this as an hour-and-a-half practice. It will go an hour and a half. If you have 2 hours, you can adjust accordingly. But this is an example of an imagination game practice. And I truly believe that if young coaches embrace the imagination game, you will grow exponentially. And then as you pass your kids on to other coaches, you're going to pass on an athlete that has a love of the game fully entrenched, and that's where they become coachable, is because they know that coaching is designed to help them, because they know that the precision game exists, but they have survived the imagination game.